We are holding in the Gemara Daf Chaf Aleph Amid Beis 21b. And if you remember, I mentioned to you yesterday that 21b is the house and the address of a very famous fictitious character. And I said I'm going to open them up, show you some pictures of that. So just share the screen. Here we go. This is Sherlock Holmes, 221B Baker Street. Let's see the pictures. Wrong pictures. Here it is, maybe. And if you can see that on the screen, well, I'll just go like this. New share. Share the screen. We'll do that this way. Here. You can see that. That's me when I joined the IDF for a short run. This is in one of the Emdot. This is one of the I think this is on Purim actually. And you know, we're making exciting for some of the soldiers in one of the, I think it's near Hebron, one of the small areas in the West Bank. And I'm up in a high area, one of these tall towers where the cement is a few feet thick. And this is, you know, so I'm trying on all the gear, feel what it's like to be a soldier. Okay, let's do a new one. Let's see if this works this way. I'm not sure if it's going to work this way. All right, I'll do it like this. Maybe this one works. This is me and my friend, Dr. This is me and my friend, Dr. Watson. This is it's my Chavrusa went with, but you see the address 221B Baker Street. So this is Dr. Professor Holmes' place. Me wearing all this fake stuff, and that's a statue of Sherlock Holmes. Just a little notice of the bedichasa. Back to the Gemara, 21b. So the Gemara here is discussing the reading of Rosh Chodesh. We lay down several rules. We need to have a minimum of 3 verses, 3 psukim, to honor the 3 parts of Tanakh, Torah, Nevi'im, Ksuvim, to show they're all holy, to honor Kohen, Levi, Yisrael. You need at least 3 verses for every Torah reading, every Aliyah. You need at least 10 psukim, 10 verses for any given Torah reading. And you cannot begin and not end 1 verse to the beginning, 1 verse to the end of a parsha. You have to stop at a place where you're able, a subject where you could stop. Rosh Chodesh has to have at least 4 aliyahs, 4 Torah readings. 4 people called to the Torah because you have a korban musaf, an extra sacrifice brought in the Beis HaMikdash. The Rosh Chodesh itself is only 5 psukim, 5 verses, this part over here. So that's enough for 1 aliyah. Now we need to do another 3 aliyahs on Rosh Chodesh. So we add on the 2 parshias, the 2 paragraphs before, which is the Vaydaber of a Tamid, the daily sacrifice, which is twice a day. And that's his first paragraph of 8 psukim of 8 verses. And then you have Uviyem Shabbos, Eila Shabbos, the extra sacrifice on Shabbos of 2 sheep, and that's 2 psukim. Now we have to divide these 10 verses, these 10 psukim, among 3 aliyahs, keeping all the rules, keeping it fair. Every aliyah has to have at least 3 verses, and you can't stop with 1 pasuk, 1 verse left to the end. You have to do it in a fair type of way. So how are you going to fit 3 aliyahs in these 10 psukim if it's divided into one paragraph of 8 verses, one paragraph of 2 verses. It's just not going to fit so well. The first one should read 3, then the second one reads 3, and the last one only has 2 psukim from this paragraph. So that's why the Gemara quotes a brisa, which comes up with a solution. I'm not sure if it's being shared. I wasn't sure. I'm not sure if it was being shared. So that's why, okay. So that's why over here, when you have these 10 psukim divided into 3 different aliyahs, we come up with a solution that pasuk number 3, we actually repeat. Meaning, aliyah, the first aliyah, reads the first 3 psukim. The second aliyah reads verse number 3, 4, 5 again. And then the third aliyah reads number 6, 7, 8. So you have 3 psukim, 3 verses at the end of his paragraph. They add 9, 10. So you have altogether 5 verses. And then aliyah number 4 is aliyah of Rosh Chodesh, which is from 11 through 15, also 5 verses. This is a unique solution specifically for Rosh Chodesh. We don't do this to repeat a pasuk, repeat a verse, one pasuk, one verse. We don't have that at all. In Torah reading, maftir is it's a different thing. And this is unique for Rosh Chodesh, for the Torah reading of the first of the month. So let's read the Gemara inside. Says the Gemara, if you have a Gemara in front of you, Chaf Aleph Amud Beis 21b, 4 lines from the bottom, where we're talking about Rosh Chodesh, where we have 4 aliyahs, 4 people called to the Torah. The Mishnah stated that on the first of the month and on Chol HaMoed, the intermediate days of Pesach and Sukkot, you read the Torah and you call up 4 people to get an aliyah. The Gemara asks, how can you divide these 10 psukim, these 10 verses from 1 to 10 between 3 aliyahs? How do you divide it? How can you divide the Torah reading of the first of the month of Rosh Chodesh to be divided in a halachically valid, over-the-board manner? The first paragraph over here is 8 psukim, 8 verses. As carbon, it's 8 verses. How do we divide it up? If the first one, the Kohen, gets an aliyah of 3 psukim, the second person gets an aliyah of 3 psukim, that's still after verse 6. In this paragraph, you have only 2 psukim left over. That's an issue to leave 2 psukim over in a paragraph, because it says, we should not leave less than 3 psukim, 3 verses to the end of a paragraph. Because you don't finish off, the Gemara will explain soon in the next page why we don't do it, why we don't have less than 3 psukim till the end of a paragraph. This idea of to give the Torah, each paragraph its own, like, respect, its own idea, not that you're reading it as a side note. Mikli arba'a. So therefore, it's not going to work to read the first one to read 3 psukim, the next one to read 3, the last one will have 2 psukim left over. Mikli arba'a. Should we have on Rosh Chodesh aliyah number 1 read the first 4 verses? So now you have 4 verses left over. Aliyah number 2, read the next 4 verses. So now paragraph 1, beautifully divided. However, you have an issue with paragraph 2. Paragraph 2, which talks about Shabbos, is only 2 verses. It can't be its own aliyah. Pasul Shiva, but Uvayam Shabbos have in today. So if you read, the first aliyah receives 4 psukim. The second aliyah receives 4 psukim. Altogether, between the next 2 paragraphs, you have 7 psukim, 2 from Shabbos and 7 from Rosh Chodesh. Let's divide that into 3 aliyahs. Into 2 aliyahs, and let's see how that works. Second paragraph, Shabbos, is 2 verses. Third paragraph is 5 verses. Altogether, you have 7 verses. How do we divide it into 2 aliyahs? Should the third aliyah, who needs to read at least 3 psukim, 3 verses for his aliyah, recite 2 psukim of the second paragraph and 1 pasuk of the third paragraph, and then the next aliyah receives a further 4 psukim. That is also problematic because should we read 2 from the middle paragraph and 1 from the third paragraph? It's impossible because there's another rule. Turning the page to 22a. You cannot begin a parsha, begin a new paragraph with less than 3 verses, less than 3 psukim. Therefore, how is it possible to finish a Torah reading if you have 2 from paragraph number 2, 2 verses, 1 over here, you can't, then you're only going 1 pasuk into a new paragraph. If you go 3 psukim into a new paragraph, so then you're only leaving over 2 for the end. And then you're finishing within 3 psukim at the end of a paragraph, end of a parsha. So the rule is that you cannot enter a paragraph less than 3 psukim in. And we're going to say again the reason soon. And an aliyah must have at least 3 verses. So what's the other option? Should one read 2 verses from the second paragraph and 3 verses from the third paragraph? You have another issue. Pasul today. Now you have 2 psukim left over at the end because these are very unevenly divided aliyahs. These 15 psukim, 15 verses to be divided into 4 aliyahs out of 3 paragraphs of 8 psukim, 2 psukim, and 5 psukim are very unevenly, not able to be divided easily to keep all the rules. So how should we do it? How can we read the Rosh Chodesh Torah reading? Is the other option to add the next few paragraphs talking about I think the next one is we're talking I think it starts with Yom Tif, maybe Pesach. Answers the Gemara. Amar Lai, Rava answered back to Ula Barav, Lo Shamati Kayetziba. Lo Shamati, I have not heard a solution from my teachers for this issue. However, Kayetziba Shamati, I have learned with regard to a similar problem. We learned this in Masechta Tainis. For those who have long memories and remember what we learned in Masechta Tainis, Daf Chavav Amid Aleph, which states, Titznan, we learned regarding to the Ma'amadas. The Ma'amadas are the Jewish, as we see on Yossi's background, the Beis HaMikdash, the Holy Temple. They were communal karbanos. Every single Jew donated a half shekel coin to the Beis HaMikdash every single year, and that was used to buy all the communal karbanos, sacrifices in the Beis HaMikdash. And that was used, that was enough to cover all the korbanos, all the sacrifices for the entire year, plus other things as well. Nowadays, every Israeli would give a half shekel coin. It wouldn't be able to cover even the one dinner of the Knesset. But then it was a substantial amount of money, a silver shekel. Even today, it's probably, if it was a pure silver shekel, probably a good at least $200, I'm guessing, per person. Since every single Jew had a part in the communal korbanos, they're part of the. So every korban is representing every Jew, and one must be present when the korban is brought in the Beis Hamikdash. So if you're bringing your own sacrifice for whatever reason, you have to be present. Now, how is it possible for every single Jew to be present every single day in the Beis Hamikdash? Every day there were communal korbanos brought, at least two of them, many times more. So the answer is the Jews had representatives. The original representatives of the Jews, where they would choose the most pious people, the most righteous people from every city, from every Shevat, from every tribe, and they would send representatives. They would be in the Beis Hamikdash, representatives from all 12 Shvatim, all 12 tribes, to be there in the Beis Hamikdash, and every single city would have its representatives. And from among their chosen people, some they would send to the Beis Hamikdash, Holy Temple, to represent them. Some would stay within their own cities where they were, and they would join together in the square of the city or in the shul, and they would daven over there. They would have special tefillah, special prayers, davening in their own cities. And those people who would be in their own cities, they would have to fast every single day. We learned except for Friday, but all the details we learned in Masechta Tainis. And they would have a special Torah reading just for them. And the Jews were divided into 24 different groups, and then representatives from the Chaim, Levim, Israelim. The Torah reading they would do on their fast days was the Torah reading from the very beginning of the Torah. Parshas Vaeira. On Sunday, they would. I'm just going to go back to the very beginning in this newest tab, Parshas Vaeira, just to show you a little, to make it more palatable. In the first Aliyah, the very beginning of the Torah, not sure why it's not working. In the very beginning of the Torah, see if it'll work from here. Deciding not to work today? Okay. In the very beginning of the Torah, you have Parshas Vaeira. Parshas Vaeira, first Aliyah. Let's see. Oh, we got it. Here we have 7 days of creation. Day 1 of creation, Bereshit bara Elokim, the first day God created heavens and earth. That is 5 psukim, 5 verses. Day 2 is a new paragraph. That is 3 verses. Hashem said, "Let the waters separate to heaven, to be heavens and to lower waters." Day 3, you have a much longer one. This is when Hashem made dry land and made vegetation. Sorry, this is 9 through 13. This is 5 psukim, and so on and so forth. Every day, Sunday they will read one paragraph. Monday they read another paragraph. But once again, you need to have 3 aliyahs, and you have to divide somehow. How do we do that? So So there's a unique system. So Rava answers, I don't know what to do about Rosh Chodesh, but about Ma'amados, on the special fast days, for those who are fasting because the people of their city are representing the Jews in the Beis Hamikdash, and they gather in their cities, they read the Torah like this. The first, on Sunday, right, Bereshis is 5 verses, Hirakia has 8 verses. On Sunday, when they're gathering to read the Torah, they read Bereshis, which talks about the creation of the first day and the creation of the second day. The Tani Allah, Bereshis v'shnayim hirakia ve'echad. And they say, how would they divide these verses of Bereshis? So the first paragraph is 5 verses. Second paragraph is 3 per verses. So the first paragraph, first day of creation, they were divided into 2. And the second paragraph, they're divided into 3. How will they do that? There must be a method of doing that, because here's only 5 psukim, 5 verses. How can 5 psukim be divided among 2 aliyahs if every aliyah needs to have at least 3 psukim, 3 verses? And 3 plus 3 equals 6. Unlike the famous story in Chaim, there was a person who went to the restaurant in Chaim and ordered a plate of a bowl of soup and a loaf of bread. And they ate their meal, they're very satisfied, and afterwards they came to pay. And they said, how much do we have to pay? So the housekeeper, the woman of the restaurant says, let's see, the bowl of soup is 7 zlatas, and the loaf of bread is also 7 zlatas. 7 plus 7 equals 11. And you owe me 11 zlatas. And the person said, thank you for the discount, but 7 plus 7 actually is 14. And she says, nope, 7 plus 7 is 11. I'll tell you how. She says, I was married to my first husband, and we had 4 children together, but unfortunately passed away. She was a widow. She married a widower, she married a man whose wife passed away, and he also had 4 children. And then once they got married, they together had another 3 children. So she says, I had 7 children, he had 7 children, and altogether there were 11 children. So 7 plus 7 equals 11. So in an alternate reality, something like Chaim, this might work. Though, tell me you didn't hear that one before.
I heard it.
Oh, you heard it. Okay. So in an alternate reality, it might work. But how do you divide 5 psukim, 5 verses among 2 aliyahs, if each one needs to have 3? So the Gemara is going to figure it out. Go through the options. And we discussed this. How could we have 5 psukim, 5 verses, be divided among 2 aliyahs? This second day of creation, where Hashem says, let there be a heavens and the water should divide, this is 3 verses, verse 6, verse 7, verse 8. That can be its own aliyah. And we need to have 3 aliyahs, so let that be aliyah number 3. The first paragraph, which is 5 verses, the first day of creation, how can that be divided into 2 verses, 2 aliyahs? And one must have at least 3 psukim, 3 verses, as we said in the previous Amud, for calling Levi Yisrael, etc. or turn of Yom Ksuvim. The Itmar Allah. And so, in order to answer this question, it was stated with regard to the Mishnah, Rav Omer, Shmuel Omer Paisek. Rav and Shmuel. Rav says, Rav and Shmuel, the first generation of Amirayim, they had a difference of opinion. How do you divide these 5 psukim, these 5 verses, into two aliyahs. Rab says that really you skip, meaning you skip backwards, which means that you read for the first aliyah and Bereshis, you read verse 1, 2, 3. So and there was light. Stop. And the second person repeats verse 3 and reads verse 3, 4, 5. So that's Doilik. He skips. He finishes a verse, and then the one aliyah and the second aliyah repeats this verse. Shmuel says Posek. Posek means divide. Read a full verse 1, 2, 3. You stop it by though it's called a snachta. Snachta is that sort of upside down. I describe it. Horseshoe. You stop by the word by Yar, and Hashem said, "Let there be light." Stop. That's the end of aliyah number 1. Aliyah number 2 starts Vayar. And therefore, you're dividing verse number 3 into 2 parts. And since it's a half a pasuk, it's a half a verse, it will be considered to be like 2 psukim, like 2 verses. You do see that at times in halacha, half a day. For example, someone's sitting shiva. The last day, they only need to sit part of the day is considered to be like an entire day. The king is coronated, even if he's in the month of middle of the year. The next year starts off his second year of his reign, even though he might have been king only for 2 days of the previous year. So 2.5 psukim will be considered to be as 3 psukim. There is a question asked on this. Shmuel is going to stop over here by the word Vayar, and there was light. That's where he's going to stop. Have you ever seen a pasuk in the Torah with less than 3 psukim? Less than 3 verses? Every single pasuk in the Torah has at least, 3 words. Have you ever every single pasuk in the Torah has at least 3 words? So why would Shmuel say stop over here? So actually some say, Shmuel says, that you stop by the word or. And Hashem said, let there be. And the next person starts off, or vayar, light, and there was light. Again, you're not, we're talking about the times of the Beis HaMikdash. Nobody will make the bracha after. So you have person number 1 reading, V'yomer Elokim Yehi. Person number 2 immediately takes over, or vayar. So it wouldn't be so questionable about how could you break up a pasuk, break up a verse which has Hashem's name, because each one who's there could read the Torah, those words, finish the pasuk quietly to himself and let the other person read it. And there is questions asked. My mother, some other days, they do read less than 10 psukim. Because if you're looking over here, according to the days of the week that they're reading, some days have less than, certain amounts of psukim. You do read less than 10 psukim at times. So they say that they repeat psukim, or they have to add more days of the week. It's not something that's practical for nowadays. It's something that's more like a up for discussion type of thing. Another question, the Pnei Yeshua, I'm sure Dovi is related to. Just tell us after this year, please. Somebody asked the question: how come we don't do like we do on Chol Hamoed Sukkos, where we read paragraphs, even of days that are not connected to that day of Chol Hamoed, just in order to finish a number of aliyahs? Why don't the first one read the whole first paragraph, the second one read the whole second paragraph, third one read the whole third paragraph? Chol Hamoed Sukkos, we do it. Why don't we do it also on my mother's? Do it at the same time. That way you don't have to repeat psukim, you don't have to skip psukim, you don't have to interrupt psukim, according to Shmuel, says pasuk that you stop in between. And to say that you don't want to hold back the congregation, you don't want to keep everyone in shul more than necessary, so you don't want to add to the Torah reading. But if this is something you have to do, it's something you have to do. So he answers that every single day of the days of the week, the Maimonides, those fasting in the times of the Beis Hamikdash, they would read the Torah only 2 days, that day and the next day. That was the way to set it up. Otherwise, if some people will read it more days, so then the person who's Maimonides on Sunday, I'm the representative on Sunday, I feel better. I have a longer parsha. The one on Monday is upset. I have a shorter parsha. I have more, I have less. Because the one on Sunday, my aliyah is, look, 5 psukim plus 3 plus 5, I get 18, 15 psukim. Some days are shorter, some are longer, and there might be jealousy. Look at day number 6 on Friday. Right, it goes from 24 to 31, which is quite long. Which truth is, it goes all the way to Lassos. Right, so 24 to 31 plus 3, so it's 11 psukim. So people will get jealous. You're longer, you're shorter. So in order to make it even, they said everyone reads the Torah reading of their day plus the next day, and we divide the psukim in the way it's in, in the way it is. So true over here. 5 psukim plus 3, you're going to get only 8 psukim. Even if you repeat a pasuk according to Rav, you only have 9 psukim. You're not going to have 10 psukim reading, but this is a special halacha when it comes to Maimonides serving in the base, being a representative of the Jewish nation in the Beis Hamikdash. The Gemara will get more in depth about why Rav and Shmuel each hold of what they hold. Why one will say that you divide the pasuk in half, and one will say you add a pasuk, and we'll get to that all in more detail. An interesting question that's brought up. Oh, Yaakov, welcome back. Oh, you missed when I shared my picture from the IDF. Let me bring it back up. See, this is me when I'm back in my days of the IDF. Hashem, and we gotta take the job and finish the job. Mitzvah Hashem. Let's go back to.
All kavod, Rabbi.
Thank you. So the question asked is, on the fast days we read Vayechal. Let's go back over here. Vayechal Moshe. There's on the Torah reading of the fast days, we do start 2 psukim, 2 verses into a new paragraph. Question is, why do we do that on a fast day? If we said that we shouldn't, we should begin at the beginning of a paragraph in the Torah and not at the end, it's a question of Tosfos. So he gives a few answers. One answer is that it's something, every fast days happen 6 times a year. On 5 of those fast days, we read this Torah reading of Vayechal. On 4 of those fast days, we read it twice. So it's a Torah reading that we read 10 times a year. So it's something that people will not get mixed up in. Everyone is familiar with. You could start at 2 psukim, 2 paragraphs in. Another answer is part of the reason that we make that they said you can't start at the beginning of a paragraph is because some people come late to shul, some leave shul early, and they're going to miss. But over here, when you're starting from a certain spot, it's okay. Let's continue now with a few ideas of the 10th of Shvat of Yitzchak. Yitzchak's coming up, God willing, this Shabbos. Actually, today is tonight actually will be the Shloshim for my father. Mitzvah Hashem will be in yeshiva starting at 8 p.m. It's a very full program actually. Going to here.
Sorry, Rabbi, when?
Tonight, 8 p.m. in yeshiva.
Okay.
And for those who are far, the same Zoom that we're using now is going to be able to be used to watch Lisa speakers from tonight. But the Chayit in Lubavitch will have special video presentations dividing the whole Maamar Melukot. My father actually was involved when he was 15 and 16. He wrote some of the Maamarim that were in Melukot, etc. For the Rebbe's Maamarim that he edited. So you could be in person in Yeshiva tonight, or Mitzvah Hashem tomorrow. Mitzvah Hashem will be also on Zoom, on the same Zoom that we're on right now.
Okay, thank you, Rabbi.
Sure. Thank you, Yossi. We're going to go back to discussing some ideas of Yud Shvat, of the 10th of Shvat. 10th of Shvat, my father was named for the Frierdiker Rebbe, Yosef Yitzchak. His grandfather, Rabbi Yitzchak Raskin, we mentioned several times, was arrested in 1938 in Russia. He ended up, we found out many decades later, meaning after the Iron Curtain fell down, only in the 90s, when for a short time period, the KGB opened up all their files. Now they resealed it again, and they found out he was shot about a month after he was arrested. He was arrested in Adar. He was shot about a week before Pesach. My father his name was Yitzchak Raskin. My father was named Yosef Yitzchak. He was born 4 years after the Istalkus, after the passing of the Frierdiker Rebbe. They asked the Rebbe what name could they give a name after the Frierdiker Rebbe, after the grandfather, because they're not sure if he's alive or not. And us Ashkenazim, we don't give a name after a living person. They didn't hear of him. We're talking about 1954, 1938. So we're talking about a long time, 16 years, but nobody heard of him since. The Rebbe said to give a name after the Frierdiker Rebbe. The Frierdiker Rebbe lived 69 years, same years. My father lived the same amount like the Frierdiker Rebbe. And in his class, growing up in Crown Heights, he had 16 boys in his class. 14 of them were named either Yitzchak, Yosef Yitzchak, Yosef, or an exchange of there were, I think, 12 Yosef Yitzchaks, and another 2 of them who had either Yitzchak or Yosef, like Yossi, and the other 2 had different names. I think that older siblings who were called Yosef Yitzchak, older brothers, because they're 54. So everybody had a nickname, because either you call them by their last name, but they had another problem too, because there were 2 Yosef Yitzchak Gararis in his class. So if you called someone Itkin, this one, that one, Garari can mean one of 2 people. So everyone had a nickname: Yossi, Fitzi, Itchy, Fitchep. So that's how their nicknames stuck with each other. This is the Frierdiker Rebbe from the very first picture we have of him from 1910, 1927, when he right after he became Rebbe, all the way is the last picture of the Frierdiker Rebbe we have is from several weeks before he passed away. This is actually a very famous picture of the Rebbe playing chess with the Frierdiker Rebbe. This was Frierdiker Rebbe was told by the doctors to do some lighter activities, not to be so intense and strenuous the entire time. The Rebbe, our Rebbe, was playing with the Frierdiker Rebbe, his father-in-law, chess. I actually saw somebody use a chess engine to analyze his position. When the Rebbe was playing chess, the Frierdiker Rebbe noticed that he's specifically playing moves that he should let his father-in-law win. The Frierdiker Rebbe should win, and the Frierdiker Rebbe told him, spielen ordentlich. You have to be sincere. You have to be real. Meaning, don't be a faker, even to let the other person feel better. And the Rebbe learned an entire lesson just from that. That's a very famous picture of the Frierdiker Rebbe. Mr. Frierdiker Rebbe in Poland on a sled. We're talking about 1937 here, right? To 39. These pictures are 30s, 37, 39, and the Frierdiker Rebbe is you see on a sled. It's still in Poland. Finally, when he came to the U.S., you see the Frierdiker Rebbe. We saw yesterday a video of the Frierdiker Rebbe when he came to visit America in 1930. How energetic he was, And over here, Frierdiker Rebbe was unfortunately very weak. He already had MS, unfortunately, which you see Frierdiker Rebbe's facial muscles were very stiff, very paralyzed. That's why many pictures he looks very serious, and when he laughs, you see like this, a laugh with entire face picks up, is besimcha, and laughs. This is a Frierdiker Rebbe. You might think the Frierdiker Rebbe was weak. He had a stroke after the Holocaust, and etc., as we explained yesterday. And the Frierdiker Rebbe, Baruch Hashem, did a lot more for Yiddishkeit than many young and energetic Rabbanim. Frierdiker Rebbe opened yeshivas all over America, including Pittsburgh. In the 1930s, Frierdiker Rebbe sent here shluchim, Rabbi Posner, all over, starting a release time program with, at that point, there were several thousand Jewish children in the release time programs. Release time programs is legally an hour a day, an hour a week. Any child in any public school in America actually could be taken out of school to learn religion. You can't teach them in the public schools, but you could take them out of the public schools and teach them religion during school time. It's mandated by the Supreme Court, and the Rebbe started the release time programs. And at that point in time, there were so few yeshivas in America that even boys from religious houses were going to public school, boys and girls. And it was during the Holocaust, the war is raging. The Frierdiker Rebbe says, you should know, when there's 5,000 children who at home don't eat kosher, and they don't even know even the Aleph Bays, and if they know how to speak some Hebrew words, it's because they heard it. They know nothing about Torah, and they come and they say Shema Yisrael. The effect in heaven, Shemayim, literally shakes the entire foundations of Shemayim. Baruch Hashem, thousands and tens of thousands, you could say, people who went to yeshivas and became frum and connected to Yiddishkeit, all as a result of these release time programs. I myself went when I was a yeshiva student in Crown Heights. My father told me that he used to do release time in a school, public school. I was in Crown Heights then. Right across, it's on Empire Boulevard, right across from a shul, where now is Empire Shtibel. And they would literally take almost a whole school out every Wednesday from 2 to 3 for release time. They'll pick up over 100 boys, 100 kids, boys and girls, and it'll be two yeshiva boys, running this entire group of 100 people, davening with them, teaching them. He says his friend would teach, and he would run around, getting everyone excited, controlling, taking care of every issue, giving out tons and tons and tons of treats. Frierdiker Rebbe, of course, besides for activism, etc., I'm saying there's many things, but Frierdiker Rebbe, he says many times, Frierdiker Rebbe's writings are prolific. What we know all about Chabad history from the old times comes primarily from the Frierdiker Rebbe. He wrote and wrote. This particular picture, the Rebbe said, this encapsulates the Frierdiker Rebbe. He said, "Das is the Rebbe." This is probably the most well-known picture of the Frierdiker Rebbe. You see, when the Frierdiker Rebbe smiled, his whole face lit up. This is when the Frierdiker Rebbe became a citizen, a U.S. citizen. Congress made a special law that he could become a U.S. citizen at home. The Frierdiker Rebbe, as we said, in 1945, he had a stroke, was unable to speak properly, and instead, Mamarim, Torah discourses from the Frierdiker Rebbe that were published in earlier years were given out to be published throughout different dates. Our Rebbe, he was in charge of the publishing society of Chabad, which is amazing. The Rebbe did this full-time job while he had a full-time job in the till 1945. The Rebbe had a full-time job in the Brooklyn Navy Yard and taking care of many more things, including all the publishing throughout the entire all Chabad publications. And he published this minor as well. He brought it to the Frierdiker Rebbe. Frierdiker Rebbe published it to be given out on Shabbos Yud Shvat, the day he passed away. I mentioned very briefly the story of the rabbi in the Bronx. Came to he was a writer. He was offered to become a rabbi in a shul in the Bronx. He didn't know who to ask. He was a chassid before the war. So he decided to go ask a Chassidish Rebbe in New York, and he went to the Frierdiker Rebbe, and the Frierdiker Rebbe gave him advice, told him to do it, but he said, the shul is a shul. I don't like the shamus. I don't like the one running the shul. He didn't know what that meant until he came, and the shamus was always making him absolutely crazy, harassing him, spreading libels about him, interrupting him in the middle of his speeches, shaming him in public. He came back to the Frierdiker Rebbe, and the Frierdiker Rebbe told him, the shul is a shul, I don't like the shamus. The shul is a shul, I don't like the attendant of the shul. He didn't understand what the Frierdiker Rebbe meant. I understand now that the Frierdiker Rebbe is saying the shamus is not a good person in the shul. But who, how does it answer the question? Says he went home. Before he left, the Frierdiker Rebbe asked him, please come back in 3 Sundays from now. And he went home. That night he couldn't sleep. He woke up early in the morning, much earlier than usual. He walks into the shul early for the minyan, about an hour before his usual time. As he's walking towards the shul, surprisingly, he sees a president and the treasurer of the shul walking to the shul at the same time. And he asked them, what are you coming so early? And they told him. They walked in and they saw the shamus, the same attendant of the shul, was taking all the money from the pushkas, where people donate, and stuffing it into his pockets. On the spot, he was fired, and Baruch Hashem, he had a good run from then on. Story continues with the Rebbe, but that's for a different time. He came back 3 Sundays later to 770, and he saw a huge crowd. It was the Levaya of the Frierdiker Rebbe. Right? This is a picture, the video of this is one picture from the Levaya of the Frierdiker Rebbe. Many thousands of Jews came from all over the New York area. Same Eastern Parkway as we have today. The Frierdiker Rebbe started signing his name literally to the day, Yud Shevat, exactly 1 year before he passed away. He started signing his name, Yosef Yitzchak, in letters. And I could bring up examples with a Yud Ashuris. Last year I brought examples on the screen. A large Yud. Yud is the way it's written in a Sefer Torah. Instead of signing his name as usual, signed it with a Yosef Yitzchak with a large Yud. Like it's written in the Torah, literally to the day. So to say the Frierdiker Rebbe was unaware that he was going to pass on to the higher worlds on that day, especially as the Frierdiker Rebbe himself says, a tzaddik it only passes away with their consent. Obviously, we know that he passed away on that particular day for a reason. And he gave out a mimer to be learned on that day, called Basi Lagani, I've come to my garden. Every year, the mimer had 20 chapters, and every year our Rebbe on Yud Shvat would say a mimer explaining one chapter of the mimer of the Frierdiker Rebbe. The mimer for the year, every year is a series. This year would be the 14th year. Will be the 14th year in the series. Starts from 1950 to 1970, 1970 to 1990. So in the 14th year in the series, we're talking about the year 1984, 1964. The Rebbe had multiple ma'amarim, explaining chapter 14 of the mimer of the Frierdiker Rebbe, Basi Lagani. Now, just a short recap, and what is a mimer? We're talking about sichas, ma'amarim, Torahs. Sounds very al-nu. When a Rebbe speaks, there's different types of ways, things they say. You have what's called a sicha, a talk. You have many talks. There's a sefer of the Rebbe. Many talks of a Rebbe. I know I can't see it with my background. Many talks of a Rebbe. Talks. You have talks about Torah, talks about Chassidus, talks about current events through a prism of Torah, lens of Torah. These are regular talks. The Frierdiker Rebbe would say many stories during his talks. These are called sichas. Ma'amarim. A mimer means a discourse. It's a totally different spiritual type of experience. during the Maimer, all the Rebbeim would close their eyes. They would hold on to a physical object, usually a handkerchief. It says, according to spiritually, when certain tzaddikim are in a when they're in a very spiritual mode at that point, and you feel that the soul is about to leave the body, they have to hold on to a physical object. All of our Rebbes, our Rebbe, the Frierdiker Rebbe, they would all hold on to a handkerchief or another physical object, sometimes another person, while saying a Maimer. A Maimer will be said in a different tone usually than a Sicha. A Sicha is usually said, a tone, sort of like teaching almost, like a lecture. A Maimer was said as giving over a message, giving over information, a very different type of tone. And a Maimer is exclusively talking about, you could say, not Kabbalistic, but Hasidic ideas, more in depth. That's the idea of a Maimer. In Chassidus, it's called Dach, Divrei Elokim Chaim, words of Hashem. This is when a Rebbe is being a conduit to say the words of Hashem to this world, similar to Moshe Rabbeinu, saying his words from Hashem. When the Rebbe says a Maimer, it's a very special time, much more than a Sicha, much more than a regular talk. But by our Rebbe, a Maimer would have a special niggin before, a special niggin after. During a Sicha, people would be sitting. Many people would sit. During a Maimer, everyone would stand up. A Maimer would always start with a pasuk, with a verse from the Torah, and Nevi'im, Meksuvim, from Tanakh, sometimes a Gemara, and it would be explained. Start explaining that in depth. The Frierdiker Rebbe chose a Maimer, Basi Lagani, to be published on the day he passed away, and the idea of Basi Lagani is about making Hashem comfortable in this world, making Hashem live in this world in a way like someone's comfortable in their house. Just like in your house, you lay on the couch, you lounge around, no one stops you. That is a Maimer. And so we'll go through over the next several days, several ideas of this Maimer. Tomorrow, Mr. Hashem will have regular share, but it might be a little shorter tomorrow. So Yeshua Koyach.